For those who don't know me, I am Smoke, and I saw Under the Mayo's video about Devil May Cry, and then the follow-up about the camera in the game, and I thought he had a really interesting take, and wanted to talk about him because some things I agree, some things I do not, and I think it would make for an interesting conversation for everyone.
And so I'm here. I'm Under the Mayo. Hello, Smoke. Thank you for calling me. And
I'm also here. I'm ZazMan117. I'm here to talk about other stuff as well.
The man quoted in the video.
Yeah.
Okay. The mutual contact.
the middleman, the inside man.
Yeah, no,
Exactly.
I was sure this would be an interesting and friendly phone call. I mean, if it was just someone randomly saying, "Hey, I want to call you and talk about your DMC5 video," I'd be like, "Nope." I've had enough of you guys.
You see, you have besmirched the good name of Devil May Cry. You should have your internet privileges revoked.
You don't understand.
You don't understand what you're talking about. I have over 1,000 hours in this game, and I have no target over you.
You understand, Mayo? From your first criticism of Devil May Cry, I've already doxed you. It's all over.
Yeah,
It's all over.
you're done for.
You're done for, kiddo. How dare you?
Yeah, like we were saying before we officially started the call that I mean I saw it coming. Obviously, I spent a month playing DMC5 because I wanted to know, I wanted to understand. I played through the game 3 times on the 3 different difficulty levels, spent a lot of time in Bloody Palace and just thinking about it, because I knew that the reaction, I mean, it wasn't always going to be positive. I mean, just look at my Titanfall 2 video, right? So I knew that there was always going to be the response of people who just don't agree that a game needs to be challenging, and that they're going to say, LOL, just do stylish combos, bro. The game's not supposed to be challenging. And that's just something that it just escapes me. And I've only heard it in criticism regarding Devil May Cry 5. I've never heard that before. I find that really interesting. ZazMan, you've seen stuff like comments. Yeah.
So how do you, like you said about the difficulty, about the combat being a bit too easy for you, once you got to the higher difficulties like SOS and DMD, like what did you think of, like how did the game challenge you?
Well, I went over this a bit in my first video, since my main criticism is the difficulty. About halfway through SOS, when you pick up Dante, the game just seems to change.
Dante's encounters are quite a bit more challenging than Miro's. From SOS onwards.
I felt like I was able to just generally mash triangle and just do whatever through my entire Devil Hunter playthrough. And if I died occasionally, well, they have the orb system, right? And I wasn't enjoying the game enough to not want to use the orb system. Does that make sense? I'm like, I don't want to go back and do this fight again because I'm not even enjoying the fight. I just want to get through it. And then halfway through SOS, when you get to Dante, that stuff just kind of stops working. You start getting hit a lot more. You start dying, and you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll launch this guy into the air and see if I can hold him in the air a little longer. And oh, if I do that, I'm going to need to switch a weapon." And the game starts engaging me in the systems that they actually designed, and that's how it would have been from the start if I had had a hard difficulty available from the beginning, like I feel any good action game should. And then I started to actually see why the game is so loved. I'm like, wow, this combat system is awesome. And then all the way through Dante Must Die, it was, I mean, except for the V parts, it was just great all the way through, because it, like, the combat, it meant something. And that's what I was looking for. That's what I look for in any game, whether it's action focused or not.
I find it funny in the V sections, especially in like his early ones. There's so many riots in close quarters, and I don't know what it is about riots on Dante Must Die, but they just shred you. And V just you only hope just to spam side dodge and just summon Nightmare immediately. Otherwise, you just take so much damage so quickly. And they have the audacity to put it in these close little like environments where the camera is just not going to work whatsoever.
Man,
and you have to just it's just such a nightmare. It's almost like intentionally designed just to like be really annoying.
I think so. Like, I think they knew what they were doing with that encounter for the second V mission. Because, like, riots are so dangerous in close quarters, near walls, and but yeah, like V is not super well equipped to deal with them. But I find it really interesting that like your main criticism of the game is more about the difficulty not being available to you than the core mechanics.
That is absolutely true.
That can so easily be fixed.
I know.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you that like difficulties should not be rewards. Like I think everything up to Hell and Hell should be available for a first playthrough.
I wouldn't go that far. I would say that if you want to keep Dante Must Die locked as a reward bonus difficulty, I wouldn't have an issue with that. Talking as a new player, right? Mm-hmm. I would be happy if either Son of Sparta was unlocked from the beginning, or if there was an intermediate hard difficulty that took the best parts of Son of Sparta and rebalanced it into a different hard, and then there was Son of Sparta, something like that.
I feel like if it was like Son of Sparta, like health and damage from the get-go, I feel like that would just be much more conducive to actually interacting with the game properly from the get-go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
I'm gonna say that when I first played 5, Devil Hunter was appropriate for me. I was really bad at the game, and it felt natural. And then SOS felt a bit easy to me because I improved so much since my first playthrough. That I should have done the jump straight to DMD, just because I learned the mechanics well. But then again, like I put research during my playthrough because I always wanted to learn about the combat in Devil May Cry, and 5 is a bit more accessible. But I do agree that the difficulty, the hard mode, should have been available because, like, looking back at Devil Hunter, it's a bit too easy. Especially like if you know how to grasp the enemies soon enough.
Especially with the context of Mayo's complaints. When I look at I spend a lot of time looking at games I like, especially on Twitch, and I watch a lot of smaller streamers. But almost universally, when I'm watching them play on their first playthrough or something, they're not really paying attention, and they very frequently refer to the game as a bit of a button masher.
Yeah, they go into autopilot.
And this is something going back to your video. And it's within the context of difficulty and whatnot. I feel like people who are saying they understand your critiques of the game and then going on to basically undermine their understanding of it, they don't really get why the difficulty is an issue. And I feel like Devil May Cry 1 especially does a lot to fix this. Because you can't go back and replay missions and orbs are legitimately scarce, combined with really worthwhile enemy design, the overall game design in DMC1 is better because it rewards and punishes you from a mission basis based on how well you're playing.
That sounds interesting to me.
That's a lot more applicable because your long-term effectiveness is gauged on that.
You mentioned Twitch streamers, and in my research for this video, I went around and I watched other YouTube channels talking about DMC. I watched all of the Sphere Hunters retrospective on the whole series. I watched several other reviews. I watched smaller channels that only have a few thousand views on their opinions. I tried to take it all in. And a common thing that I saw a lot of was issues of streamers playing DMC5 for their first time and facing mass harassment from DMC players. And stories of streamers that had to ban several hundred people in their first DMC5 stream because people were hounding them for not doing the combos and not switching their weapons and just mashing triangle and just stinger, stinger, stinger,
I have something to add to this.
And the thing is, if that game is looking that bad from people who are playing it for their first time on stream, isn't that the game's fault? I think it's the game's fault.
To an extent, yeah, but to another extent, I think that a lot of the people Now, this is a big thing, right? A lot of the people that know what the game is supposed to look like, quote unquote, at a high level, they won't go into people's streams and tell them do the combo. The thing is, right, in DMC, there's this huge gap between exposure and like individual player skill. And I think for DMC4 it was a big deal because there was one particular YouTuber being Donguri who got very, very famous. And obviously big ups because he's a really good player. But because of that, the perspective of DMC4 and by extension its combo system was by and large only like shown through how he played. So by the time DMC5 came along, you had a lot of people who really liked his content who didn't really understand why it worked or why it was played that specific way, telling people to play that specific way.
Yeah, and touching a bit on that, I think for any game, regardless of how well designed it is, asking for someone who's on their first playthrough to like grasp the core mechanics, not even just the core, but like the more advanced mechanics. I think it's more about streaming etiquette than necessarily about the game itself.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, dicks are going to be dicks regardless, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a huge difference between like saying, oh, if you want to vary your combat, you can switch weapons mid combo. There's no delay, like letting the streamer know, and saying like, oh, the combat should be played by switching weapons and styles.
And you're playing it wrong for that.
Yeah, no, I mean like going into the stream and saying like, what is this trash gameplay? Like that's the kind of stuff that I think some players
I'm really thankful to know that a lot of the smaller streamers I've interacted with, I've genuinely made good friends with over like just their DMC streams and whatnot. And I'm glad that a lot of the people I interact with who also watch smaller streamers aren't like that. But I know for a fact, because even when I stream DMC, the few times I do, there are always people who join who tell me not to use certain weapons or tell me not to do a certain thing. And I'm like, first of all, no. Second of all, no, I don't care.
Yeah, you're enjoying the game how you like to enjoy it, man, and you're engaging in most of its systems.
I feel like that's what DMC is core about. It's like the thing is, right, there's no reason to really improve in DMC. And ultimately the only thing you get out of it is your self-satisfaction.
Once you get to a point.
Once you get to a point, like after the first playthrough. What I mean more so is the fact that it's because it's so expressive. In the end of the day, what matters is that you are feeling stylish and your combat reflects that. And for first time players, they'll do like really simple stuff or sometimes really cool stuff, and they'll feel it real good, and that's what the combat's all about.
I just want to add something. There's no reason to reach the skill ceiling or to get near that outside of personal satisfaction. Yeah. Although there are real reasons to learn more about the combat. Like say you're trying to do like SOS, like the latter portion of the game, or that they must die. Like isolating an enemy and being able to maintain him in the air, like makes you not have to worry about defense. Like that's a legitimate, useful skill to have.
Absolutely.
Regardless of how stylishly you do that, like maybe you're just like mashing it at like jump cancel moves to and staying static, and there's not much structure to it. But just maintaining the enemy in the air has real gameplay applications.
Once you get to a challenging difficulty. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's like the whole thing.
This is something I complain about every single time I play Devil Hunter. It's like, even do Bloody Palace, like I can't do anything.
Those guys just first 20 to 30 rounds of Bloody Palace are so bad.
I'm asleep.
I use a cheat table to swap the difficulty of the early stages to Son of Sparta.
Yeah.
It's more fun that way.
Yeah, I dropped my damage mod. It's so frustrating that we have to use a cheat table to do it.
Just a second, guys. I'll be right.
No worries, no worries.
You know,
it's so frustrating having to use so many mods just to make like the gameplay enjoyable consistently.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because I mean, like I've said in my videos, I like the game. Like once the combat gets good on a challenging level, It's awesome. I really love it. I mean, I wouldn't have played. I wouldn't have played it 80 hours if I didn't like the game, right?
Yeah.
But my critique about the first 15 hours still stands, and that's huge.
Exactly, and it's for a first impression of a game that's making a decade-plus long return. I feel like that's kind of a weird take to go with, you know, like not yours, rather how they approach the difficulty.
Yeah,
it's like after returning for so long, why do you want to make such a like opaque or like bad first impression?
Yeah, it leaves a bad first impression, and I'm like, I know if you go into the game with the mentality of like right from the start, I'm gonna see what kind of cool, crazy combos I can do. I can see that if that's your mentality going in, then I'm sure that you had a pretty good time, even though the enemies die pretty quickly. But
I'm really sorry about the.
It's okay.
I'm back.
but I'm saying that like if that's all you want, then all you want is a combo simulator. All you want is a training room, right? You don't want an actual campaign designed around its systems.
Yep.
So I mean,
and Devil May Cry 5 has been critiqued for that. Like not even just by like other people, by like high level players. The fact that it's more akin to like just a visual combo simulator than being a breathing system as a game.
Well, I knew I wouldn't be alone. I knew that there was going to be people out there that when I was playing it, I was like, this can't just be because I'm not an old school DMC player. There's got to be DMC players that see this stuff too. Not all of them, but there's got to be some.
I agree. Like if your experience was Son of Sparta straight away, like unlocked by default, you would have such a different perspective on this. It would be so much more positive.
And it's mind-boggling that people. And again, this is something I've only heard from DMC fans. It's crazy that they say that, well, they need to lock away Son of Sparta because if new players who don't know how to play pick that, they'll have a bad time. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, if they don't want a hard difficulty, they're not going to pick hard. And there's already, it doesn't mean they have to pick it. They have normal and easy to go through anyway. I've never heard that. It's so weird.
One point I want to bring about is that when difficulties are an unlock, it kind of alleviates the pressure to have more unlocks, and I think that is one of Devil May Cry 5's biggest flaw. Like, there's not a lot of content to unlock besides the more advanced difficulties.
Yeah, there's no cosmetics or even anything like that, right?
And like, this is why I meant that pretty much all difficulties should be available with the appropriate warnings. Like, do not try this unless you really want to suffer, or like unless you're a veteran player, like say for instance DMD. Having that option available and having like something to sweeten the pot. We have the super costume, but I think that's a bit too little. I think having more collectibles and whatnot.
Imagine if the style meter
would be a good incentive.
Imagine if the style meter did things like gained you coins to spend in a cosmetic shop. What if the style meter, like hitting S or SS or whatever, gave you like a 3-second damage bonus? You know, like things like that, because the orb system fails because of the 100,000 orbs that they give you, and the game floods you with orbs even if you play badly anyway. And so
and there's also the hat, right? I don't really want like unlocking the skills to be too difficult, just because like I think the game becomes much more fun once you have everything, and it shifts the burden of how well you do from the character to you. But I do.
Sorry, really quickly. The issue is that while the moves are super fun to use, getting them at a fast speed, because you already get them pretty quickly, because you get like 100,000 orbs out the gate.
Yeah, you unlock basically everything you need at the beginning.
Getting them quickly isn't really the issue. It's the fact that you can get them quick and do nothing with them.
Yeah.
And you have no incentive to like do anything with them. That's the issue.
Yeah, I think like you're trying to gate like some progression based on how tight the player plays. But I think a better way is to lock some things behind how well the player plays. A good example of that is actually in the game. There is a mechanic called Sin Double Trigger, which is Dante's ultimate form. And there's a skill for that if you're in triple S, you can activate it for free for 5 seconds and get out of it, and you can keep doing the, like getting in and out of that. And I think stuff like that makes your style have gameplay meaning, but not necessarily just a damage boost, but more things that you can do. I think that's an interesting.
I love that.
To take.
I absolutely love that. I just wish that it applied to something outside of Sin Devil Trigger, which you don't get till near the end of the game.
Like even with V, like if you were, let's say, Triple S, you could have Nightmare out consistently or something, and by extension, you could make his encounters a little more crazier and a little more fitting to the fact that he has so much crowd control.
There's all kinds of things you can do with it.
Yeah, I think V suffers a lot from the amount of enemies in the game. It's a lot more fun to play in the LDK difficulty from the special edition, or the.
When you told me that, my brain melted out of my ear when you were like, "Yeah, V's a lot more fun to play in LDK." I'm like, "How is it?"
And like I used to hate V, and now I play a lot of V just because it's so much fun when there are 30, 50 enemies on screen.
You know what's funny about my first video? That there was that section where I show my friend playing with his foot, and and I was so ready for a whole bunch of people to disagree with me and say that's bullshit, or say that the footage was faked or whatever. I was so ready for it, and there wasn't a single comment even about that section. And I was like, wow, I guess just everyone just nod their head and be like, yeah, that's right.
Something Smoke mentioned earlier about something actually you mentioned about the difficulties is I really like how I'm going to talk about Doom Eternal. Something I really like about how Doom Eternal sets up his difficulties is both with the art that associates it and the description of it. And I feel like that really sells the difficulty well. But something you were talking about earlier, Smoke, about the game pushing you to use advanced mechanics. Watching people do the Super Gorness Master level, because it's such a hike in difficulty, right?
Such a hike, yes.
Watching people do it and displaying that they don't understand these advanced mechanics, and even on the base campaign, the game expects you to learn its systems, and it will actively punish you for not doing it.
Especially in those first levels.
Yeah, it's like Hell on Earth to Doom Hunter's base is one giant skill check. It's like, okay, are you good enough to play the rest of this game? And that's why I really like Sekiro for doing it, because it sets up active skill checks to check the player's competency and their fundamentals. Yeah. And because of that, you find so many people who are getting so frustrated with individual fights, and it's so obvious what they're doing wrong, but they just haven't learned it from the game yet. And it repeatedly punish them until they rectify that mistake. And I've seen people go from, like, getting destroyed by a fight to identifying a single thing they're doing wrong, and then gradually incorporating it and becoming more competent at that aspect of their gameplay. And DMC5 doesn't do that.
I think
not till harder levels.
I think the best moments that DMC5 actually does that, like makes places a brick wall in front of you, is actually in the Bloody Palace mode, which is not part of the main story. It's more like a challenge arena. You go through 100 combat floors, and there they let loose and play some really tough encounters for you. And if there were some sprinkled in the main story, maybe tuned down for the lower difficulties, I think that could fix the issue. Especially some enemies test your skills more than others. Like some test your offense, some test your defense. So I think it's less about like the game as it's inherently is, and more about like individual enemy placements and like they being a bit too conservative at points.
You know, with the difficulty thing, talking to DMC5 fans, if you don't get the point about challenge being necessary for a game systems, imagine if you picked up Devil May Cry 5 for your first time and Nero's pistol one-shotted every enemy, right? Imagine if that were the case, right? And then you go and you laugh at people for not doing stylish combos. You're like that's a failure of the game, not of the player. Like the game shouldn't have given me a pistol that one-shots every single enemy in the game if the game wants me to be using my sword and doing combos. Now that's an extreme example, but that's basically what I'm saying. I'm saying that the game has given a very simple autopilot option combined with infinite revives that just make the whole playthrough a piece of cake and really uninteresting to someone who's not going in with the mentality of, okay, I'm here to find out what my biggest crazy combo is, because that's a really small number of people when it comes down to it. And this goes back to the Titanfall 2 video I made, which is the first time I really saw that people have this issue about challenge being connected to systems. So many people were asking why I was not using the advanced movement mechanics in Titanfall 2, even though I was praising them. Titanfall 2 has really awesome, fast, creative movement options. It's really, really good. And I'm sure that it shines in the multiplayer. And they were asking why I wasn't doing that in the campaign. And they're like, you're missing out on the whole game. Why aren't you using all your movement options? I was like, well, the point is the AI is so bad that they're all just standing out there in the open and not moving, and all I have to do is run in, shotgun everyone in the chest. So, I mean, why do I need to do a wall run and then an air jump and then another wall run and then a ground slide when all I have to do is open the door and blow everyone away? And like, this is about games pushing you into their systems through good challenge. And it applies to everything. It's not just Doom Eternal that everyone seems to think it is. It's like every great game.
It's really frustrating that, like, when I want to, like, quote good game design, I have, like, the same 6 games to pick from every time. Because it's just like, why are more people just doing, like, it's something I really like, I know you're not a big fan of it, but Darkwood and Dark Souls 4. Mm-hmm. Is because, like, at their core, what I like about them is the fact that they have some really good player-centric design decisions that make for a much more cohesive experience.
Agree. I totally agree. Even though I don't enjoy Dark Souls, I see that it is a challenge-based system game, and that's great.
So going back to your, I'm really sorry, I'm hogging again. Going back to your thing about Titanfall, and this is something I see with Resident Evil 2 Remake as well. Is the perspective of the game differing between people who played on standard and people who played on hardcore? Mm-hmm. And personally, I feel like hardcore is the ideal way to experience Resident Evil 2 systems.
Yes.
And the way the game balances its decision-making with its resource management, it just sucks you in so hard. And it would not be nearly the same if you were given an MP5, like, this was infinite from the start. Mm-hmm. And it's something I really appreciate. Like, to this day, it's something I appreciate RE2 about. And it's just that its mechanics and its decision-making are so well woven together that you have no choice but to learn the game and its systems.
I agree. This is not just about combat games and action games. This is about games in general.
There's one thing I've been meaning to bring up about Devil May Cry specifically, and that goes like to the entire series since 3, is that the game does not really communicate its advanced mechanics really well. Like, most people who know about jump canceling, for instance, found out about it in a tutorial, and I think...
Shout out to Broly.
Yeah, shout out to Broly.
Shout out to my man Broly and Chaser Tech and Delusionary Killer.
Yeah, and I suppose like the game wasn't really balanced around that mechanic, but it's speculation on my part. But even so, like, the game doesn't even tell you that it's a thing. Oh, you can cancel your attacks by jumping on the enemy. Like, and that's something that very similar to communicate. And like maybe do a tutorial or a secret. Like, I think secret missions are good places to make advanced tutorials, because that, like, a lot of people are completionists and then they have to actually learn the game in order to complete everything. I think that would be a better place instead of doing just like the hook platforming that they so love to do with Nero. Like, make some more advanced combat stuff in there.
Talking about platforming, I feel like platforming does nothing to elevate DMC5's level design, and it's just busy work.
Yeah, no, the platforming is mindless.
They punctuate it with tentacles.
Yeah, I agree. Though I actually preferred this way to the way it was in the other games, because Devil May Cry platforming was never really stellar, and to me at least, it always stood in the way of the part where I actually wanted to play, which was the combat.
Sorry, you're about to say there, Mayo?
Oh no, I was just saying that the platforming in DMC5 is mindless. The thing is, it just might as well not even be there. That's like why do I need to stand on this thing and then do a grapple so I get over there? Like, I mean, what's the point? There's nothing to even learn from it.
They're not even in combat arenas.
Yeah.
So like if they
Yeah,
were
there's no
in
platforming in combat
you could
arenas
make
either.
some use of them.
Yeah, it feels like.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
I've heard this. I've heard from a lot of people saying that DMC5 took all the stuff that we didn't like in the other DMCs and just focused it down to what we love, which is the combat. And I believe them, right? Because now the game just feels like walking from room to room in a locked-in combat arena, and it feels like there's nothing else. And I find that kind of an empty experience.
I think there could be ways to remedy that without necessarily bringing back so much of the platforming that really padded out the previous games. Just make it more cinematic, more interesting to look at, because a lot of the game looks the same.
Yes.
And that ties us to the camera that you bring forth in your videos. Because even though I think particularly that the free roaming camera is good in combat, there's no reason why you can't have fixed camera outside of combat. And that with interesting framing and more interesting visuals instead of half the game being in the Clive-off, I think that would have made for a more interesting experience, just visually, without interfering with the gameplay.
Before we started recording, Smoke made a point about Bayonetta's lock-on, which allows you to see which target you're going to lock on to next.
Oh yeah, like we're getting to lock-on soon, Zaz. It's coming. I have plenty to say about lock-on.
I was just thinking with the platforming, that would be such a good system to have, because you could make arenas actually dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, the actual design of the arenas leaves a bit to be desired, and there's so much potential for platforming in those arena fights. But yeah, the camera, like the camera issue is never about whether it's better or not, right? You can make an argument for the benefits of an angular camera like Ninja Gaiden. That's how I would prefer Devil May Cry in a more Ninja Gaiden style of camera. Then, but it will have its flaws. There's going to be things about it. Like I've been playing Hades. Hades is isometric fixed camera, and sometimes enemies are behind walls and I don't see them. That sucks. But it's part of it. It's one of the things you have to accept in that camera style. And in free roaming camera, you're also going to have things that are good about it and things that are bad about it. And my issue isn't so much that it's bad or it's worse or better. It's that I'm fucking tired of all these games being games where I have to spin the camera around with my thumb. I'm just tired of it, and it just seems like more and more of the artistic creativity behind camera direction is being lost generation after generation in AAA games. That's the larger point.
Yeah, I really like that you included that section, like especially with I think I talked about it earlier, where I was like saying Resident Evil does a lot of good environmental storytelling through its backgrounds, and all people can focus on is their lack of self-direction, or awareness.
Yeah. And like for exploration, I 100% agree with that. It would make for a much more interesting experience. But when it comes to combat, and more specifically, Devil May Cry combat, I think that the free roaming camera offers some really distinct advantages because of the way that some inputs work. And I say that because the previous games, they were a more fixed camera angle, like you play 3, you play 4, like you have...
Yeah. I liked the camera in 4. I liked the combat camera in 4. It kind of moved a bit with the right stick, but it still kind of stuck to a certain like degree. I liked it a lot.
And the reason I don't like that so much for Devil May Cry specifically is when you look at other action games, I'm gonna bring God of War and Bayonetta. You have a light attack and a heavy attack, and your actions are defined by how you combo these types of attacks together. Like you see, you have in God of War light, heavy. There's one attack, and like light, heavy. There's another. I don't remember the specific combos, but it's kind of that fixed combo system. Like you have a huge list of different combinations of these 2 buttons, and those combos like may behave differently. Whereas in Devil May Cry, the focus is much more on specific inputs. Like you have like your lock-on back melee, which is usually lift. You have forward lock-on forward melee, which is the stinger, the gap closer. And those sort of inputs with just one button, like they're so important to Devil May Cry, and having control of the camera to make them more like a better angle for you to press the analog stick. It's like you press down instead of pressing a weird diagonal. I think that really impacts gameplay. So I think that a free roaming camera in combat offers a distinct gameplay advantage when it comes to this system that the DMC has in place.
Sure, if you feel that way, I can respect that. I would rather get rid of the directional input stuff altogether and go with the God of War system, where the special attack is hold R1 or hold R2 and then press one of the 4 buttons and you get a different move instead of pressing a direction and hitting that button. Because if you're looking at Dante as he's fighting someone kind of on an angle and you hit back triangle, but you're off by a little bit on the angle because the camera's a little weird and the screen's a little busy, you don't get the move you want. But in God of War, if I want to do the vertical spinning attack, I hold R1 and I press X. Regardless of what direction Kratos is facing, I get the attack that I want every single time. But in Devil May Cry, if you're slightly off with the directional input, you don't get the attack.
Yeah, and to counter that, I think that God of War systems limits the amount of moves you can have.
Absolutely. DMC is a far more complex system. Absolutely. You couldn't exactly do it that way.
It's kind of part of Devil May Cry's identity and part of what makes it great for so many players. And I don't think that moving to something like God of War, like Bayonetta, with the light and the heavy and the one button to kind of modify those, I think it would. I don't like saying that expression, but it would dumb down the combat too much, would simplify so much that would be really challenging achieving the same depth.
That's fine. I totally respect that. I totally respect that. The execution barrier is a real thing. And I mean, I could make the same argument for fighting games of in favor of command grabs being a down back forward rotation instead of just a down forward rotation. The execution is part of the enjoyment of the game. I get it.
Yeah, and I don't really say that like just for a matter of execution, because fighting games specifically have that school of thought that, oh, let's lock a powerful move behind a difficult input. I don't really care for that. I care more about like how many moves can you fit and how diverse you can make the moveset. And Devil May Cry's system allowed for a lot of differences, because you have back. I'm going to ignore the lock-on because it's hard saying lock-on every move. You have back melee, you have forward melee, and you have back forward. And they haven't explored forward back, but like that's another input that can be done. Like that's already 4 different inputs modifiers for just one attack, and that makes stringing together. Like if Devil May Cry doesn't even have a full moveset, considering these 4 possibilities, and some weapons don't even have a back forward, like say in the air, and that is something that level of complexity I think makes the combat very unique to the Devil May Cry experience over something like, say, God of War.
Sure.
And I'm not saying God of War is a worse game for it, but it's a very different experience.
Right. It doesn't have the deeper levels of exploration. Now, I mean, it does when, like, you can find, like, do a search for, like, the Masters of God of War 3 combat combos, and, like, they do some crazy-ass stuff, but there aren't nearly the amount of options that you have on DMC 5, speaking from my experience, that really wanting to explore those deep levels, DMC offers a lot, and I absolutely love that about the game.
I think that's something God of War does really well, is that its combat system, it heavily sells how the game is presented within the context of Kratos. It's like you're an unstoppable murder machine, and your ability to string attacks together in the way that you do, it presents the game really well.
Yeah.
And in Devil May Cry, it's easy to imagine Dante just being a red blur of like all of his different weapons flying out of him and just no one standing a chance. And I feel like because of the input direction, it's easier to give Dante a much more in-depth and larger moveset because of it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just pretty cool stuff.
Did you guys want to talk about lock-on?
Oh yeah,
lock-on. I think lock-on is...
you were talking about Bayonetta and all that.
Yeah, very interesting. So just to give context to the viewers, lock-on in DMC, like you usually lock on to the nearest enemy, and you can direct which enemy you're gonna lock onto with the analog stick before you press the button. And that system is like not super precise. Sometimes you lock onto the wrong enemy. Like sometimes you're combo an enemy and you let go of lock on for whatever reason, like maybe fatigue, maybe you do an action that does not require lock on. And then instead of locking on to the same enemy, you lock on to a different enemy, and that can be rather infuriating.
Jesus, that's an understatement.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Also, like there's a skill that I use for combo making that requires you let go of lock on with Dante and sends the enemy away. And locking back onto the same enemy in regular gameplay is a chore. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's why I'll never. The technique he's referring to is interceptors with
Interceptor. If you ever play Devil May Cry 5 at a higher level, like you will know when you hit that technique.
I refuse to use interceptors because Smoke does more combos. We're two different types of players. Smoke does more like technical combos, and I do freestyles, where I go into arenas and I play the arena as it is. Okay. And trying to do similar links as he does, like the interceptors and all that, where I have to unlock and relock, gives me a goddamn aneurysm. Because every single time I'm doing it, and I let go of lockout for a microsecond, you can guarantee that I'm going to lock on to some other idiot in another postcode. I'm not gonna hit it again. It's just not gonna happen.
This is what was so confusing about the response to the first video of everyone saying, man, you never have to move the camera, you never have to do any of that stuff if you just get good at lock on. And I'm just like, oh, are you serious? Your answer to this is lock on?
You need like a predictive AI algorithm brain to understand where lock on is gonna go next. Like one of my friends has a mouse underneath his foot to control the camera because he's so goddamn dumb.
Told me about that. That is so great. What a complicated solution.
Also, like this person, he's a friend of mine as well. He had the audacity to say that my control scheme was weird because I rebound my controllers. And he plays with controls.
He sculpts plastic to put on his controller for more buttons.
Yeah,
I'm so impressed by his tenacity to press more buttons. It's amazing. I love it so much.
Yeah, but like back on topic, I want to mention Bayonetta because Bayonetta has a lock-on system, but it's not nearly as important as DMC's because it also has a heavy and light system, so you don't necessarily have to. The attacks that require directional and plus lock-on are not super important. But the way that game does lock-on is whenever you're not pressing lock-on, it shows what enemy you're sticking to, the enemy that you're gonna lock on to if you press the lock-on button. And that is such a small quality of life change that I think would improve the combat so much. And again, make it a toggle so that people who think that clutters the screen too much can turn it off. But I think that's such a simple and easy solution that would increase the quality of life.
That's brilliant to me.
Pretty much everyone.
If you
it is.
Just point at someone and
really
see that you will lock on to them before you press lock on, man, that would be so helpful to have in that game.
Yeah, but I also want to compare the lock-on system in Devil May Cry series to games that don't have it. For instance, God of War.
Sure. Because
they kind of solve the same problem in different ways. Which is the problem of stickiness, like how to hit an enemy. And the way God of War solves the problem of you don't want to be hitting the air all the time. You want your attacks to land. And the way to make that reliable, they gave Kratos the Blaze of Chaos, I think, in the first game. So Blaze of Chaos, they have a large area and a large reach. Mm-hmm. So you don't really have to stick precisely to the one enemy that you're looking at. You're just going to his general direction, press the attack button, and it's probably gonna hit.
Yeah, because they're a horizontal swipe. That's
exactly.
So you just
and even like the vertical strike, like it has some some tracking, right? And God of War, in that sense, doesn't have to be as sticky, but try to play Devil May Cry without pressing lock on. You'll be sitting in the air all the time.
You'll be what?
Not work. You'll be attacking the air and not hitting the enemy all the time.
Yeah,
because like you have a much shorter range, and Dante, I think he sticks probably as well to the enemies as Kratos, which is not very well at all. Like your attack motion does not like move you into the enemy, like say the Batman games, the Arkham games, where you press a button and Batman goes flying across the screen to hit enemy. Yeah, Spider-Man. And I think that level of low stickiness from Devil May Cry can either be solved by giving him a longer range weapons or by having a reliable lock-on system, and I don't think how else it can be solved besides making him more sticky to enemies, making his attacks travel more, and changing the basic weapons that he has. Because like even though God of War has other weapons that are not as versatile as the Blades of Chaos, your first weapon is the default. So you gauge the game's stickiness and that sort of gameplay aspect by the initial weapon, right?
Yeah, the God of War's like God of War being important to do combos and stuff like that doesn't come from like being able to focus on one enemy or like lock on or anything. It comes from the fear of dropping your combo meter. If taking a single hit, you want to launch them into the air so that you can do your spinning move. And right from the beginning of God of War, they communicate the importance of that, because you start seeing the orb gain right away when you do an easy 10-hit combo. Like that's what's so cool about the way God of War introduces it, because they put you in that first ship with like 7 enemies surrounding you, and you just start swinging. You just start swinging those blades, and since they're hitting multiple enemies, you start getting a combo from it. And it says 10-hit combo, 2 orbs. You're like, oh, wait a minute, orbs? What are orbs? And you look at your menu, you're like, oh, wow, if I spend orbs, I can get these like upgrades. And like, boom, right there. First 30 seconds of the game, you're already incentivized to do combos and to figure out how to do combos. And it was just such a good system of introducing how the game should be played on an interesting level.
The thing about currency tied to gameplay, Devil May Cry does that too, but it does not communicate that it's doing it.
Yeah.
So like you don't know that you're making less money because you did poorly, or that you're making more money because you did well until you played the mission. Like you get the rank, but you get the style rank, but you don't know that you're making like more money or how much more money you're making. You don't know the difference. Like for all you know, it can be like, oh, it's 200 orbs out of 2,000 if I play like ass instead of playing like a pro. So why bother? Or it can be massive and you won't know the difference until you replay it.
When you beat a level in DMC5, like I don't feel like the game is communicating to me, you know, the style meter related to orb gain. Like I don't feel like it's really communicating it to me well. And then I get to the end of the level and they're like, S rank, 29,000 orbs, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it feels pretty like empty. It's
I'm like, okay.
I have no you don't have any frame of reference, and also I think it really sucks that how do I phrase it?
If you don't mind.
Yeah, you don't have like a clear way to know how the style system is going to reward you in terms of total points. Like sometimes I'm comboing like an absolute madman, I'm gonna get 5,000, and sometimes I am doing just like average gameplay to my standards, like a lot less, and I get 7,000 on a different mission. But like comparing the way I was playing, it's just like too inconsistent in Devil May Cry. Whereas tying like, oh, you managed to hit that many consecutive hits without dropping, so you gain that much more of the currency. I think it's a cleaner way to communicate that. Besides just the style, I like the style meter, but I think it should be supplemented by a more tangible thing.
So I wanted to say there is that people that dismiss your complaints on the basis of saying it's about filling the style meter and being stylish, They don't understand some things that are like critically wrong with like the fundamental design of DMC5 in terms of its ranking, wherein the style meter doesn't matter because you already have so many orbs.
Right.
The ranking system doesn't matter because it doesn't punish you for playing poorly.
Right.
There's no damage. There's like no damage modifier for losing orbs or style.
Yeah.
And the style meter is just really either it just throws points at you or it just takes them away. And almost always, if you just get through the mission without dying, you'll get an S rank. And at worst, the lowest rank I see people get is A. And it seems like
it's pretty forgiving.
Yeah, it's really forgiving, and because of that, the style meter becomes irrelevant, and that becomes a core concept of the game that becomes irrelevant. Like, DMC1, and to a lesser extent DMC3, I think really nailed the ranking system. Wherein, like, in DMC3, I think that it does time, damage, orbs, style, time, damage, orbs, style, and items used. And I feel like these collectively make for, like, okay, if you got it done quickly, you know the map very well. If you got low damage, you know how to avoid enemy attacks, and you understand the attack pattern, so you know the enemy design. And if you have style points, you understand the combat design.
Yeah.
And items used obviously shows that you're not relying on anything else to get through the levels, so they reward you for it. And the moves being relatively expensive for how many orbs you get reflects that. And it makes both the style meter and the ranking system more worth it together.
That sounds great to me.
Going back to enemy placements and stuff like that in DMC5. And this is why I think DMC1 does a lot better than DMC3, and people that talk about DMC3 kind of neglect to mention what it does wrong. DMC1's enemy design is much more cohesive to you learning the game, and it's something I really hate about Devil May Cry 5's Shadow. You know, the mini-boss in Mission 18. I feel like that fight does absolutely nothing. It's as filler can get because nothing has changed. Whereas in DMC1, when you first encounter the Shadow, spoilers, Mayo, I'm sorry. When you first encounter the Shadow, you can't hit him with your sword. So you're entirely reliant on your guns to take him out. And because of that, the enemy complements your moveset by forcing you to, not forcing you per se, but rewarding you for different aspects of your skill set, being positioning and your firearm usage, or even your air movement if you have it at that stage. And because of that, I feel like that's just not just with one enemy in DMC1. Enemies throughout the game do that, where they incentivize you to learn different aspects of your moveset, and the game will reward you for doing it because the style meter is tighter, and the ranking system, by extension, is tighter.
Yeah, because they want new players to engage in their systems that they spent so much time designing, right? Like you don't want to put out a game and have your intricate systems only engaged in by the people who are already pros at the game. Like you want all the other people who play the game to enjoy these systems you designed too, and so the game should push you into it.
There's one thing I want to bring out that sort of relates to the style, and is that we have to keep in mind that it's a Japanese studio, and they're like just having like you being graded by your performance is already incentive enough. Like there's that slight cultural difference. So like here in the West, we usually go to the path of least resistance, whereas over there, like, oh, I got a B, I gotta play better. Like that's enough communication, and it's more about Devil May Cry 5 not being strict enough about its rankings.
DMC1 does that from the get-go, which I really like. It's like it's not even just something you get from the culture. It's you can see getting a C or a B isn't good because you can feel the effects of the game being like why aren't you doing better? And it forces you to. And it's what's great about it is when you start adhering to those systems, because of it, the game overall becomes more enjoyable because you've taken the time to understand the enemy design and your moveset.
Absolutely.
It's something I don't like about DMC3's enemy design, wherein it's like 9 of them are almost the exact same and nothing changes. And the other 8 are the most frustrating things you ever have to deal with. And it's so infuriating. It's like people, like one thing DMC1 does, I'm going to go on another tangent about DMC1, my apologies. One thing I like about DMC1 that a lot of people don't like is its boss design, because while it is a flaw that they repeat, each encounter is different enough, and each boss is different enough to how they interact with Dante and what he's capable of, that each feels like a genuine encounter. For like, Devil May Cry 1 does a much better job of selling the whole Devil Hunter aspect over like just straight up kooky combat.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that it's worse though.
Yeah, although I do want to bring the fact that when you lean too hard in that direction, you can make some enemies that are really boring to fight, like an enemy
like
that only has one weakness. And like, oh, you gotta play it this way, or else this enemy is impossible or extremely difficult. So railroading your player too hard on certain encounters can be really bad. I think a good example of that is the Devil May Cry reboot, which had a system for you had a mix of angel and devil weapons, and those like some enemies only took damage from one specific set of weapons instead of the other. Whereas something softer like Devil May Cry, the main series, like Cavalier is good versus the lizards, or the
but you can still use other weapons. Guys.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's soft.
That's good.
Restriction,
I like that.
But still being soft, I think that's better. That said, I think for bosses it would be okay. Oh, this boss is not damaged by melee attacks; it's only damaged by ranged, or vice versa. Or having phases of that boss, I think it can be interesting, but it should be used with moderation, because I don't think that when it's overdone, it can really bring the game down.
Yeah, there's a spectrum to it. You have to have a good variety to it. I mean, I know I bring up Doom Eternal all the time, but that's kind of what they do too. I mean, Hell Knights and Barons are weak to the minigun, but you can kill them with anything else, right? Pain Elementals and Caco Demons are weak to the ballista, but you can still kill them with anything else. And then you have your occasional specialty things, like a spirit can only be killed with microwave beam, and then you have to interrupt the Marauder to take him out. Like, you have your specialty enemies, and then everything else kind of fits into that spectrum of having weaknesses, but you can take them out however you want.
I think one enemy that I like in Devil May Cry 5 is the Fury, which is the most hated enemy in the game.
I've come to enjoy him more.
Yeah, because like at first he's really annoying. He keeps teleporting all over the place. He attacks you at seemingly random times, but his attack telegraphs are quite different from his idle telegraphs. And also there are strategies that you can literally like one cycle him. It's just like the game doesn't really communicate that to you, but I don't think it has to.
No, it doesn't.
Like that part of exploration, exploring the combat of what works, what doesn't. Like what I do is I parry him, and there are attacks that are better for parry, and there are attacks that are harder to parry. And then I stun him with my electric attacks, and then I prepare a big real impact, and that usually does the trick, unless I mess it up. And I think that's sort of enemy that can be easily dispatched if you know the right tactic, but is hell if you don't. I think that's really interesting game design.
Yeah, I like that. I like it. It makes
another thing worthwhile as well, that in DMC1 you can only have one particular enemy type in a room because of memory limitations.
Oh yeah.
But because of that, each enemy is really intricately designed.
Oh, okay.
Like I mentioned the shadows earlier. They have like 13 or 14 different moves. Can you name like any one enemy in DMC5 that, because what I don't mean just like artificial moves. Like each of these, they do a different thing. Because they couldn't have multiple enemies fulfill different purposes, they had to make sure that enemies were able to react to different situations rapidly.
Okay.
And because of that, you want to say something, Smoke?
Yeah, like the flip side for that is that having different enemies, like different simpler enemies in an encounter, gives more room to explore, like to design a combat encounter instead of having to cram everything into an enemy. So like treating an entire room like an enemy and approaching the design from that, like I think can work better. So in that, I think it's Devil May Cry 1's approach is more. I don't think it would be a good design decision today. It was more technical and complex, like you said. And the enemies are more intricate, but more intricate enemies means like, they have more different telegraphs that can end up being frustrated. instead of something, oh, I got hit here because I didn't see that enemy that was attacking me because I was focusing on this other one, and that communicates more agency instead of, oh, you just haven't played enough.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, no, that's a good point to make. Something I was about to say about the Furies and Devil May Cry 5 was, I see a lot of people who vehemently dislike the reboot. I think I pronounced that wrong. Whatever. People who really dislike the reboot, but they really like 5. And I feel like one thing that 5 does in the Fury, Devil May Cry reboot does in the Dream Runner. And I feel like the level of interactivity with the Dream Runner fits the game's combat better, because it feels like with the Fury encounters, at least for me anyways, I feel like I have to go out of my way to make them enjoyable for myself. And I feel like that just isn't what everyone is going to do. And because of that, the enemy can seem more tedious. And I kind of liked how in the reboot it does some things with its enemy design, like with the Dream Runners, like I said already. But people don't understand that a lot of the design, especially in the enemies and the combat, at least in terms of its gravity, is taken from the reboot. And a lot of the same complaints can be carried back and forth between them.
Absolutely. Like, my problems with reboots are more about the stylistic decisions that they made, not necessarily gameplay. I play very little of it, to be honest. Like, the reboot makes its influence known in 5, and so, like, a lot of it is positive, and some of it, like, DMC5 could use some things that the reboot did, but it didn't incorporate. I think that's another topic. So, like, that said, like you mentioned, making the encounter enjoyable for you, making it interesting, and it can also be that you have the bias of a high-level player, that, oh, I already solved this encounter, so let's play around with it. And, like, the Fury is the noob killer in the game. And I think every action game should have a decent noob killer to make people really try to think. But what my biggest problem with the Fury is how it's used in the main story. You face like one at a time. Like, maybe there's one Fury and then a couple of Canas. I don't remember the Double Hunter and below enemy placements. I don't play in those difficulties anymore. But they are really sparse. And when the Fury really shines is when it's together with other enemies, because it places such a pressure on you to be aware of the entire encounter. Because if you focus too much on the Fury, you get straight hits from other enemies, and the other way also applies. So I think that dynamic and knowing how to deal with those encounters, I think that places not much a skill ceiling on you as like a combo maker, but more how do I tackle this combat in a strategic way. And I think that is kind of missing, because they weren't bold enough to place more noob killers with other enemies.
Sounds like a Marauder.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the Eternal, but I heard the Marauder was...
The Marauder is the noob killer when you meet it. It's a one-on-one fight, and then as you encounter it in other times, they combine it with a Whiplash, and then they combine it with a Cacodemon and zombies, and so they push it. And then in the DLC, you get 2 Marauders at a time, or then you get a Marauder with a whole bunch of other guys, and then like that's how you make that stuff interesting, because once you're fighting an enemy that you know how to counter in one cycle and kill immediately, the only way to make that enemy interesting again is to put it in more interesting situations.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good testament to Doom Eternal's level design and the player kit, because when I was doing the Super Gorness Master level last night, I was really proud of myself for reacting to the situations where they would put like a Marauder in a really scary situation, and I would take what I know about him and I would just apply it to the arena, and it worked for me. And what showed to me with the Super Gorness Master level is that the enemy design in Doom Eternal is so good, because it can complement so many different map layouts and stratagems that the combat could feel, no pun intended, eternally like fresh.
Man, that encounter near the end where you have 2 Marauders. when you're
I love-
standing on the toxic wastes in the claustrophobic tunnel with a marauder in front of you and another one behind you, and if you don't keep re-picking up the toxic waste suit, the toxic waste starts burning you as you're under pressure from two marauders. Holy shit, that was
really good.
that
It's
is the
really
best
good.
part of the whole damn level.
I was thinking, like, how would a level designer be an asshole here? And I was so happy to see every single time I was thinking, okay, how can I be a massive dick? And I was like, okay, here's the buff totem, perfect. That's how you'd put it.
Yeah, and like that's precisely my chief complaint about Devil May Cry 5's enemy placement. The developers were too kind to the players. Like they should have been a bit more mean. And in their defense, like in the Bloody Palace, once you start getting to the later levels, like stuff starts getting really intense.
It does.
Like,
I really like once you're at like level 60, then you have to actually really start paying attention to what you're doing.
Level 60 is what I call the fun floors.
Okay.
Yeah, 60 is the Cavalier boss fight, and I think from then on it starts ramping up.
Yeah.
But 70 is the ultimate noob killer because it places 3 Furies against you.
Yes.
But there are a few stages, like there's one, I think it's 78 or 79, I can't recall exactly. But it's one Proto-Angelo, the enemy that does not die. That thing has enormous amount of health.
I like that enemy a lot.
Yeah, I think he's a bit too passive before he rages. I think he should be a bit more aggressive, but overall I like him. And a couple of Judaka, which is the summoner guy, which attacks you from a distance, and sometimes summoners.
I hate that fucker.
So yeah, like 2 of those that teleport all the time, and 1 tanky dude that can take half your life in a swing. And like that encounter can be brutal.
Yes, it is. That's when I activate Sin Devil Trigger.
Yeah, exactly. Like Dante has the option. I think if there's one thing about Dante's kit that I would change is I would make Judgment Inferno not stun. It's the back melee, the ground pound move that stuns in area of effect. I think that's a bit too strong. But like that's a tangent. And there's another encounter as well, which is like 1 behemoth, 1 queen, and 1 nobody. And like you can tackle that encounter either by brute forcing your way if you're good enough, or you can make them attack each other. So like that sort of encounter, I think, is sorely missing from the main campaign, even if at higher difficulties, because the most the game places it use 2 Furies, and they spawn at different times. Like they give you time to kill the first. So I think more encounters would be appreciated. Harder encounters.
I feel like developers should be ready to be assholes to their players if it means that players will come away learning something important.
And at least give them the option to pick a difficulty level where they will be treated by assholes. You know, that's...
I really want games to like... I don't like the Doom Eternal as you switch the difficulty because I want them to be like, no, you chose this. You're like, if you want to restart, you can restart.
Exactly. Like it should be a choice. And at this point in this conversation, like I think we all agree, like some Spartas should be available. My stance is even more extreme than yours, Mayo. That I think every difficulty should be unlocked by default, and then the player, like it's their decision, and play some unlocks behind them, unlock like some sweet costumes and whatnot, some sweet battle music to be unlockable. I think the game is lacking that department.
Especially in a game that's the 5th in a series where, I mean, like, these games all share the same combat idea, right? Like, triangle is attack, you have your lock on, you have your air juggles, your air combos, like it's like every Devil May Cry game is a Devil May Cry game. They're not like full reinventions of everything. So people coming into Devil May Cry 5, I mean, there's a good amount of people in there that have already mastered the other games, so why not let them have something to go in and challenge themselves with right from the start?
Yeah, and also to address one point that I've seen come up in your comment section, that you can beat Urizen to bypass. Urizen is disproportionately difficult, not because of his moveset, like it can be tricky, but you can get used to it. It's just that when you just start the game, you have no upgrades. You don't even have the split move, which is like the Helmbreaker
Yeah,
when
you don't have
go
anything.
to the ground. You don't have anything, and defeating him in that is so laborious and it's so boring that having to do that to unlock a difficulty is just not an excuse. Like, you have to treat it as an Easter egg, not as a valid gameplay option.
And how would you even know about it if someone didn't tell you or you didn't read about it? Like I going back to Doom again. Like, imagine if you played like ZazMan. Imagine if you bought Doom Eternal, all right, and you're going in as someone who's pretty experienced in the last game, and you're looking for a challenge, right? And ultra violence, not just Nightmare, but ultra violence is blocked off unless you can fight like a double buffed Marauder fight and beat it. Like, that would be ridiculous.
So annoyed.
That would be ridiculous because you don't know the game yet. It's, oh my God. And the number of people who told me, well, if you just beat Urizen, then you can unlock Son of Sparta. And I was like, I know. I said that in the video. Like, I said that.
Like, just beat yours in forehead.
Just beat yours in your first time, not knowing how to play, man. And if you can't beat yours in your first time, well, then you're not ready to play a hard difficulty.
No, like the game is like not balanced around that Urizen fight at all. Like saying that it is just not. It's kind of disingenuous. I would rate like Devil Hunter Urizen, if you want to beat him, as a very difficult DMD in terms of like his damage output and how much he takes and how long it takes for him to go down. Added to the fact that his moveset is a lot more varied and that you have no upgrades. So it's like you can be ready for Son of Sparta, or you can even be ready for DMD and still not be able to beat Urizen in Devil Hunter. And I say that as someone that, like, I've been practicing defeating that boss fight with no upgrades for some reason. And it's not easy. Like, I can do it, but it's not easy. And I am at a point that DMD is not too much of a challenge for me, and I still have trouble in that fight. So that comment that, oh, you can just unlock, you can just beat years and unlock more difficulties it's a disingenuous argument. I don't agree with it at all.
Question coming back to lock-on, is there a design reason behind not allowing you to move while you change targets?
No clue. I've been thinking about changing lock-on switch to R3 so I can supplement it with the camera, and it seems like the more I'm thinking about it, the more logical sense it makes. I don't understand the idea of you must be neutral in the game that's about you must be neutral to switch characters, switch lock-on.
Yeah,
I have no idea why that works that way.
I'm gonna be perfectly honest. Until yesterday, I didn't know that was the case, that you cannot do it, because I never tried. Because I always switched lock-on during an attack animation, because like that's the better way to do it, like the better gameplay way to do it. Not like you're just idle and then you're carefully selecting your targets. But like that's coming from an advanced gameplay perspective. Like
right.
I do that sort of stuff as I'm attacking, and that is not something that it makes any difference whatsoever to me. But I do agree that it would be better for everyone, and it would not affect me at all. So I do think it's a kind of
it's a why not especially since in the previous game you could. It's like I don't know why they took it out. That would have been helpful.
Going back.
Then again, like once again, reiterating that once you really know, like once you interact with the game systems, that sort of thing is not important. But I can see it being important for someone at a lower skill level, like just making that clear.
Someone going through their first 2 or 3 playthroughs of the game, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like I'm not saying at all that you should not discard those players. Like you should accommodate them as best as you can without sacrificing the rest of the game and too much. Of course, there are always compromises to make in one part of the game or another. But like that's kind of like a no-brainer. Like I think it should be available. And if you guys think it would make a difference for you, like. Sure, I don't mind it.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Actually, currently, someone's after replying to me on your comment section.
Oh,
because
give it to me.
So the parent comment is, I agree about the lock-on being kind of confusing, but it's not as bad as DMC1's fixed cameras. That thing was a mess. And I replied 2 hours ago saying, not really, because DMC1 is best designed from a game perspective, yada, 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 and the camera isn't much of an issue outside of the first few missions, which it is.
Okay.
The camera in Mission 3, up to about Mission 4, I would say the camera is at its worst.
All right.
And then I'd say it's fine from there. And someone is replying to me back, and someone else has replied to me back, saying, you gotta back that shit up, and I'm like, I'm about to. So I keep going muted because I'm fucking typing. Like, bro, like, seriously, like, especially like, it's just going back to what you said about the style meter, and if it actually had like not even like a gameplay effect, but if there was some reason to stacking it up, and it's nice that the game gives you a counter, you know, because it not only lets you like estimate how many you'll get for finishing the mission, but it'd be nice if that meant something outside of you get more orbs, which are ultimately pointless.
Yeah. Especially when they give you 100,000 at the start, like that is the nail in the coffin right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that's something I want to bring out. Like, one easy thing to implement is giving you orbs instead of at the end of missions. Give you orbs at the end of encounters. Since like you only can upgrade at very specific times, like that doesn't impact much. Give you the orbs at the end of the encounter and place your style multiplier. Oh, you got a triple S like rank for this encounter. Okay, so you get a 1.5. Oh, you got a D. You get 0.5. Like, make that clear to the player how much.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something Bayonetta does. Like, rewards you for encounters.
Does it?
And I think that is a much more clear way to communicate to the
I'm
player.
excited to play Bayonetta. I have it. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I definitely will.
It does a lot of things right, and I think DMC can learn a lot from it, even though I think that the combat mechanics themselves, DMC should stay the hell away from Bayo, just because like they're fundamentally different games.
Yeah.
But when it comes to that part of the game, I think DMC should borrow a lot.
You're about to say something there, Mayo.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. My brain is scrambled.
I keep forgetting things. As well. I was going to say, you said something about being able to buy, like, even though it's like kind of it's a less practical option currently at hand because it's never going to happen. But if you were able to spend style points on cosmetics, I'd really like that. Thinking about it,
yeah, it'd be cool.
I would pay good style points for being able to see Dante's ebony and ivory in the back of his coat instead of disappearing into his ass crack every time.
And like we have something like not like that, but like similar to that, which is the EX provocation, which is the most expensive upgrade in the game. Is just taunt, like it's 3 million orbs, like more stuff like that, and with like progression, like maybe even separate that to a different progression or just
a different currency or something.
Yeah, different currency just for vanity, or even. No, just a game currency, and you have to either really grind or play really well to get those. And if it was communicated better, seeing the style that I was just discussing earlier, I think it would be cool.
Like if you this is very tangential, but if you for example, I've been making mods lately for DMC5, and a lot of them are a recolor of currently existing EFX. And honestly, like, thanks to some of the modding tools that have been produced, it's so easy, right? That I can't understand why Capcom wouldn't just literally lift my mods, put them in a game as like an enableable option that you can buy with style points. And I can guarantee you would have people actually trying to get style efficiently and by proxy learning the game more and more. Like, even if they totally screw up the difficulty, which they did, I think even like small stuff like that are just missed opportunities for the game to really feel more personalized, especially since DMC5 as it is has a very expressive combat system.
Yeah, like make a Sparta Devil Trigger costume and lock it behind 100 million.
Like 100 million style points or something, or like red orbs or whatever.
Yeah,
like
people are gonna try
okay,
that.
Imagine if the progression was kind of like automated, right? Like I'm just imagining a Devil May Cry experience, right? Where you start the game and you have your you have like 2 triangle attacks and you have and that's it, okay? And then in a grab or whatever, and then you go in and you go through the first like 2 or 3 rooms, all right, and you're killing people with the only attack that you have, all right, and then once you get to a certain orb amount, it says air launcher unlocked. And then, boom, now you can start launching enemies in the air. And then you can start doing little air juggles. And you see your style meter going up. And then you get your style meter up there. And you start seeing like the number of orbs that you're getting. And then right below it, it says the number of orbs until next move unlock. And then now you've gotten 3,000 orbs in this encounter. And boom, now you've unlocked these 2 abilities. Or here's 2 abilities. Choose which one you want to take. Like, that kind of progression system would be so engaging and would communicate so much of the game's design to the player and would make it really exciting to be engaging in the style meter. And then when you go through your second playthrough, you can start with all that stuff and now experiment with higher difficulties. Like, there's so many interesting ways to resolve the issues that I have with this game, and I wouldn't be as passionate and upset with some of the design decisions in this game if I didn't really love the combat, because I'm not into the story, I'm not into the characters, I'm not into the Devil May Cry aesthetic. I'm sorry, I don't really like the music that much either, but I love the combat when it gets there.
Now you're crossing the line.
I'm
man.
sorry.
No.
I love the combat so much that it fucking makes me angry. Like if you have a kid that fucks up everything, you don't get that mad at that kid, right? But if you have a kid that is really smart and shows a great potential, and then they start fucking up, you get angry, right? And you start yelling at that kid, and you like, get your shit together. That's how I feel about Devil May Cry 5.
How dare you call me out like this? I can't do
but like, that's sad. Like, despite all the shortcomings that we have been discussing, I do think that Devil May Cry 5 is my favorite game in the series because it does a lot right, and I think that should be said, because often in the discourse, like, you just say what you think is wrong with the game, and then people mistake you for a hater, and I think that's going a bit on a tangent. I think that's how 99% of drama in the DMC community has started, because people criticizing the game and then others thinking they're haters, when they actually, no, I like the game, I just want it to be better.
It's like the thing
I think it's important to reinforce that point. We all like the game.
Sorry, really quickly, if you don't mind. It was something I said to Mayo in one of the earlier streams, is that despite like the flaws with DMC5 and despite how much I shit on it, I'm really willing to shit on it for what it does wrong, because I really, really like it.
Yeah.
Like, subjectively speaking, it's my game of the decade because it means so much to me, as silly as it sounds. But because I love it so much, I need to address these flaws it has, and I can't like it with a clear conscience, ignoring its flaws. You know, that sounds really strange, but like,
exactly.
I want them to be recognized for what they are, and understand that despite this, I still really like the game. But there's things that can and should be improved on for everyone, not just myself.
So yeah, comment section, we like the game. Show.
Yeah, like, Mayo likes the game. Like, I think it's one of the first things you said. Like, I like the game. I like the game.
No, I had to make it really clear. Don't worry, I'm going to get into a lot of negatives, but I do like the game.
It's so stupid that you have to start every single like piece of like your perspective of an opinion. You feel like, I like it, I like it, I like it, I like it. I really like it, I like it. And then you're just like, no.
Except for the Alien Isolation video. I don't like that game at all.
I feel like Alien Isolation does a lot for its earlier parts to enforce a lot of like fundamental survival horror with resource and route management, and then it just doesn't, and then it lasts forever.
You know, I try to make it pretty clear that when I'm talking about games that I don't like, I make it clear that I'm not saying the game is bad, right? Like that's why I don't want to do a Dark Souls video, because I just don't like anything about Dark Souls. There's just not a single aspect of it that I enjoy, and that would be a very uninteresting video for me to make, because I wouldn't have anything. Because here's the thing, I wouldn't change Dark Souls. I want Dark Souls to be the series that it is, and the people who love it can love it. And if I changed everything I didn't like about it, it wouldn't be Dark Souls anymore. And so I make it really clear when I'm saying that I just don't like something personally, and when I'm saying that something like just has some flaws and here's how you can fix it. Alien Isolation is trash. That is the exception. That is the one game that like I will not debate. I will not debate. You want to go in and debate me in the comments, and I will respond with LOL, and then it's done. Like, like
you have to review more games that you hate so that you can let that negative energy out. This game is garbage. I hate it.
I do the exact same with Dark Souls 2. Like, it's a huge running meme, my friend group. I have absolutely no patience for Dark Souls 2 because there's nothing you can tell me about the game that it does right. Because it's like the equivalent of like, oh yeah, this guy gave me like 50 cents after he blew my goddamn head off with a shotgun. It's just like, it's such a... Like, it's
like if someone says their favorite movie is Children of the Corn 7, and you're like, okay, man, that can be your favorite movie, but it's still trash.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like, I totally respect, like, one thing I really like about your opinions, and especially the opinions of other, like, game reviewers, is a lot of the time they're based in both a perspective of good, objective game design, and how subjectively that impacts you as a player and why you feel that way. You don't discredit the design, but you do where it matters, and you talk about how its good parts and its bad parts apply to you as a player. And because of that, I feel like I can respect it a lot more. But I have absolutely no patience for someone who's going to be like, the health economy, weapon, enemy, boss level, environmental, and item design in Dark Souls 2 is irrelevant because I can power stance. Like, I'm just not going to. I'm just gonna have an aneurysm on the spot and drop dead because I can't be bothered.
Like the fact that you can ignore every single mechanic because you can power game makes that like okay. So if you took all of those mechanics away and focus on what matters, like it wouldn't be a better game. Yes. So like this is about the game design. Like you can just I can make the optimal build that ignores 99% of the game. And I'm overpowered. So why the hell is the rest of all the systems in place? Right?
Mayo, have you checked out Darkest Dungeon?
I'm not familiar with that. Let me look at a Darkest Dungeon. 1 or 2?
1. 2 is coming out soon. TM.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at it. What am I looking at? It looks like a bunch of menus.
So, Darkest Dungeon is now, this kind of puts off most people, but I say it with absolute praise. It's a turn-based RPG, and it's a very, very good one, and it's about the mental impact that dungeoning can have on actual dungeoneers and stuff like that.
Okay.
But the way it sets up its like combat encounters and how it sets up characterization and resource management is really, really good. Like,
okay.
if you're looking for like just a genuinely good game, Darkest Dungeon crawled its way into my top 5, and I'm an absolute stickler.
Yeah, I'll add it to my Steam wish list.
I bought it for Smoke. I
Yeah.
I played for about 2 hours. I'm still getting in grips with the game.
I'm not a fan of turn-based. I actually really, really hate it. But
yeah,
recently I have been playing Chrono Trigger from Super Nintendo 1995. I've been playing that because a friend of mine, it's her favorite game, so I figured I'd try it out. I'm a few hours into it, and you know, it's cool. I might do a video on it someday, but it's definitely not anything that I really enjoy, but I do appreciate its design, and that has kept me interested.
The thing is,
I like about that game in particular is that it's not bloated. Like, it doesn't have a lot of systems. It just has the stuff that matters.
Yeah.
And like, you don't have to keep optimizing builds with hundreds of different stats and equipment. Like, you pick the equipment with the biggest number, perhaps one that gives one boost to your stats, and you pick your favorite party, and then you prioritize enemies.
Sure.
And that's about it. And I think that simplicity keeps the gameplay so pure that it stays enjoyable. Also, the game is kind of short. Like, I think it's 20 hours or so.
Oh, that's short.
Yeah, like for JRPGs, that's really short.
Oh, that's how unfamiliar I am with the RPG world. I'm liking Chrono Trigger. I wish there weren't so many combat encounters. I wish it was just a little more sparse and a little more exploration and then fighting here and there. But sometimes like I fight a guy and I walk 5 steps and then here's another guy. I'm like,
Really quick.
Chrono Trigger is
Smoke. Just really quick before you start on your next thing. You said that you like Chrono Trigger for the fact that systems aren't very bloated.
Yeah.
But it's the same. I dislike a lot of JRPG turn-based games because I feel like they're just so slow and grindy. And it's something I really like about Darkest Dungeon is the fact that its systems are huge, and combat because of it is very dynamic. And it's like, I feel like JRPGs have the propensity to end up just turning into you pressing X a lot, and very few avoid this mistake. But in Darkest Dungeon, the decision-making that goes into deciding and choosing your move or your team party composition is just so well layered that it feels like every decision you're making and how you make it and how quickly you come to that decision matters.
Yeah,
and the effects are so obvious.
The games have very different objectives. Like Darkest Dungeon wants to punish you for even playing. And Chrono Trigger is like, it's very casual, like it wants to take you on an adventure. So if it were more complex, it would just get in the way. And like also when it comes to JRPGs, it's actually like on a kind of lower end of the spectrum when it comes to combat encounters, especially since you can avoid them by like just not touching the enemies. Like a lot of JRPGs. Yeah, like a lot of JRPGs, like you have random encounters and you just log through, and every 3 steps you get a fight. And Chrono Trigger is actually, when it comes to JRPGs, it really respects your time in comparison to like some games can take like over 100 hours in your first playthrough, even if you don't go for a lot of side quests.
You know, I think the combat in Chrono Trigger, I mean, it has a good amount of complexity to it. I mean, because it's real time. Okay, like you can't just sit there and wait. You have to, like, there's pressure to make the right decision between 3 different guys. If you're going to do an attack, if you're going to do a heal, if you're going to heal your opponent, if you're going to combine your 2 attacks with another guy and wait for the enemies to get in the right spot because they're moving in real time so that you hit multiple enemies at once. Like, I think there is a good amount of complexity that has kept, as someone who's not a fan at all of turn-based combat, it's kept me engaged. So take that for what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like the gameplay complexity, like the time to time, the moment to moment gameplay is decently complex, and I think it's very appropriate. But what I meant more is more in terms of RPGs, how they're usually set up. Is that like you have crafting, you have 5-6 different stats, and you have to, like, each level you gain more stats and you distribute them and you analyze what's better. Oh, this character needs more intelligence, this character needs more strength. Oh, I can min-max this amount of stats to equip this item that's gonna let me get that skill. And there's layers upon layers upon layers that can really slow down RPGs that fall into that trap. Whereas Chrono Trigger's complexity is mostly about who you pick for a party and how you use their movements and how you combine them together and how you manage your items. And managing items is more like managing your turns, because items are kind of plentiful in that game. So it's like, oh, I'm going to lose my turn to use an item instead of, oh, I'm going to run out of items. But like that complexity is good, but like it's just the right amount. It doesn't get that into that complexity creep that bogs down so many RPGs for me.
Well, guys, I need to make some lunch. I'm on this 0 carb diet and I'm hungry every 3 hours.
Oh, so God, man! I don't envy you.
Day 3 of this diet and I'm dying. So.
I mean, you should still take carbs, but you should take complex carbohydrates.
You mean like a Reese's peanut butter cup?
Yeah. No, like fruits and shit.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm doing the whole like meats and broccoli and cheese only. Like, it's all eggs, bacon, steak, fish, and broccoli and cheese.
Yeah, a lot of proteins and oily fats. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think, like that will, if you're having chicken breasts, I'd recommend supplementing it with chicken thighs.
Yeah.
Chicken thighs has a lot more fat, and it's closer to the bone, so it has more nutrients and it's heavier meat.
I'm so dizzy. The first day of kicking soda, I had a 10-hour headache. A 10-hour headache. I couldn't sleep all night. It was really bad. But I'm on the other side though, so I'm going to be good for the next couple months. Guys, this has been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation. Really.
That same. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I wish I could communicate my points a lot better, because normally I'm pretty good at the whole articulation thing.
I think you did just fine, man.
Appreciate it.
You're doing fine. Don't worry.
My brain's all scrambled. I have no idea why. It's just different.
For anybody listening to this, thanks for listening. I hope that whatever we said led to yourself engaging in some perspective searching and some thoughts. So
is this going up on Smoke's channel yet, or
I think it would be better on Smoke's channel, since it's a Devil May Cry discussion, and you guys are presenting most of the points. If you don't want to, then I can upload it on mine if you want.
But in that case, definitely check out Under the Mayo. The man takes opinions right out of my mouth. It's quite frustrating. He stops me from making videos on them. God damn him. But definitely check out Under the Mayo. He's on Twitter, he's on Twitch, he's on YouTube. Sub to him, especially if you like Doom and other games.
Thanks, guy. And I'm working on it now. It's not going to be ready probably for a few months, but all this stuff I've been talking about with challenge-based game design, I am working on a grand master video that puts all this together, just to kind of settle the argument, but it's going to take a while to put together because it's going to be a lot of work. I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a lot of work. So, but that will be there someday. So sub to my channel and click the bell and smash the like button.
Under the Mayo is an amazing YouTuber. Check him out. His videos are great. And even when I don't agree with his opinions, he always comes from a very reasoned place, and he always has valid points. And even in Remember comment section, even if you don't agree with him, respect his opinion. Let's be adults. Let's be excellent to each other. With that, I think we can sign out, right?
Or be a total dick and get banned.
Be a total dick and have me and your replies being like, "No, you're wrong, and here's why."
If you're a total dick,
literally the process of
right? If you're gonna be a dick, be funny.
Yeah, let's be funny.
Dick, please be the biggest possible dick you can be, because we're gonna have an absolute ball reading it. In fact, only negative comments. Hell with all the positivity.
If you're gonna leave a huge comment, just make sure that it is a college-length essay complaining that I called Nero's jacket purple and not dark blue. Of which there are a shocking amount.
Are you serious? Oh my god.
You wouldn't believe the number of people who are like, Nero's jacket is not purple, it's dark blue!
It's a baby.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about, because my Nero wears a Naruto jacket. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Alright guys, this has been great. I'm gonna sign off, so cool. Goodbye, and Smoke, I'll send you the MP4 of this.
Alright, perfect.
Bye guys.
Cool, take it easy.
This video has been brought to you by our supporters over at Patreon. If you want to support the channel financially, hop in there to get ad-free videos and much more. If not, leave a like, a follow, and a comment, and join our Discord to enjoy our growing community. Shoutouts to Cole Hobson, our first S-ranked patron, and Caleb Twitcho, our first triple S-ranked patron. That said, enjoy the channel, and here are more videos.